Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name is Pete and this is a 5-minute Bags of Action review of Django Unchained from 2012. With the help of a German bounty hunter, a freed slave sets out to rescue his wife from a brutal plantation owner in Mississippi. This was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, and it has a really good cast, including Jamie Foxx from Collateral and Baby Driver, Christoph Waltz from Inglourious Basterds and Spectre, Leonardo DiCaprio, who needs no introduction, I'm sure, Kerry Washington from the Fantastic Four movies and Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Samuel L. Jackson, who also needs no introduction, Walton Goggins from things like G.I. Joe Retaliation and Predators, and James Remar from Too Fast, Too Furious and TV's Dexter, and also a brief appearance from Don Johnson from Miami Vice and also Knives Out, and also Jonah Hill actually appears very briefly too. So there was a time when I was truly obsessed with Tarantino. I saw Reservoir Dogs in the cinema when it was released. It was re-released, in my first year at university, and I was blown away by it. By the time Pulp Fiction came around, my bedroom walls were covered in posters for both of his first two movies. I love True Romance, which was based on his script, directed by Tony Scott, of course, just as much, if not more, than those two films, and I continued to be a fanboy right up until his ER episode and things like Jackie Brown and the anthology film Four Rooms. But having said all of that, the most recent film of his I've seen is Inglourious Basterds, which was the one he made just before this one. I'm not quite sure why I drifted away from his films for so long, but Django, like Inglourious Basterds, borrows its title from an old film and also recycles old scores too. I only realised recently that Tarantino, I don't think he's ever actually got anyone to compose music for his films. He tends to rely on songs or existing scores instead. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's taken me so long to get to this one. I like the cast, I enjoy westerns, especially revisionist westerns like this one, and I was, for a long time, a really big Tarantino fan. But having had a bit of a gap since I've seen one of his movies, I'd forgotten quite how different a Tarantino movie is from any other filmmaker. His early work, of course, tended to be non-linear, interweaving stories skillfully. And with this and the other films in the second stage of his career, he does now tend to tell stories in a more straightforward way. But what he does have is his own unique pacing and almost disregard for traditional film structure. This film is 2 hours 35 minutes long, and there are times when you feel like it could have been much shorter. But having said that, the tension builds and builds, and the final hour is all the better for it. The acting in Django Unchained is great. Waltz in particular is one of my favourite actors, and he manages to make Tarantino lines sound not like Tarantino is saying them, which can be a challenge, and that has been one thing that's been levelled at him, that his dialogue can have a rhythm that's very similar to his own pattern of speech. But I'd say the whole cast here brings their A game, as you'd expect, and the film is beautifully shot too. Now, this film is not an easy watch. In some ways, it's exploitation cinema, which Tarantino is fond of, and the harrowing events caused by the slave trade make for really uncomfortable viewing, as does hearing the N-word thrown around disparagingly quite so much. I found some scenes extremely uncomfortable to watch, but by the end, I think that was kind of the point. Underneath the usual shock and awe approach Tarantino takes, there is strong characterization and as ever an emotional centre. Just as in his previous films, he shows us terrible, terrible people, be they armed robbers with a taste for torture, sexual assaulters, Nazis, or in this case, slave owners and those who support them. But you do know, in a Tarantino movie, those horrible people will get their comeuppance in an equally violent action by the heroes of the film. Now, you can never quite guess where Tarantino's films are going because his pacing is so unusual. What felt like the setup wasn't really, and where you thought we were heading happened in a different way and with different emphasis than you initially expected. The focus for me was far more on Waltz's character at the start than I expected, but that did give Django's character, played brilliantly by Jamie Foxx, more of an arc through the movie. The action scenes, in all their brutal glory, were exceptional, and the gunfights were some of the most visceral moments of the film. Now, I didn't really like this film much to start with. It took me quite a bit of time to get into it, and to get past the language the characters were using particularly. But as it went on, the heart of the movie kind of came to the fore. Now, there's one scene that's played for laughs, and tonally that felt at odds with what went before. But then I remembered some of his other work, like here the KKK were the butt of the joke. But like the Nazis in Inglourious Basterds, laughing at evil seems like Tarantino's way to take away their power over you. No, this film certainly isn't perfect, and it didn't impress me in the way Inglourious Basterds did, which is probably tied with Reservoir Dogs as my favourite of his written and directed movies. But there is an awful lot to like here, in amongst the horrible things you want to turn away from. In some ways, it's a homage to films that have gone before, but it's equally very much a Tarantino movie. Even complete with a cringeworthy as ever cameo from the man himself. So, what did I think about Django Unchained altogether? I don't know. I mean, if you like Tarantino, you know what kind of thing to expect. It took me probably an hour to get back into the mindset to be watching one of his films. And for me, this is one of his good, but maybe not great films. But for me, it's worth a watch. But I'd say you need a strong stomach. And I think you probably need to be in the right mood. But I'm going to give Django Unchained, I think, 3 bags of action out of 5. Have you seen Django Unchained? Do you agree with my assessment of it? What do you think about this and Quentin Tarantino's other movies? Feel free to comment below or get in touch with us. You can do that on email, Facebook or on Twitter. We have new episodes coming out weekly, including our full-length podcast. And don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications. Bags of Action will always be free, but if you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do that at our Ko-fi page.